Hi, Faith Hoskins here with Further Up Coaching, and this is this month's webinar for May of 2023 about how to become a thought leader. Um, why I really am getting excited about this topic and this conversation is because if you've been with me at all in coaching and are part of our coaching community, you know that one of the things that I teach is that each person is responsible for their own thoughts, feelings, and actions. That we get to choose how to think, therefore, we get to choose how to feel, and therefore, we get to choose how to respond to the world around us. And I've been teaching my daughters this. I have two teenage daughters, and my oldest daughter, who's 16, she likes to push back a little bit. And she was like, "But mom, you say we're all responsible for our own thoughts, feelings, and actions, but what other people do will affect the way that I think. Or if I say something unkind, they're going to have thoughts about that. It will influence or impact the way that other people think." And so we went back and forth, and I was like, yes, but no. And, I was like, they get to choose ultimately, but she's like, yeah, but you still have power or influence, or you can impact them. And so I really began thinking more about this concept because I was like, I mean, yes, she's right. And really how that applies to us in the way that we show up. And so this has been a really interesting topic for me this month. And so I'm just really excited to dive in with you and to really begin to kind of move past or kind of broaden ourselves into seeing how this work that we do um, will can have a greater impact on the world around us for good, right? Like that we even are responsible for ourselves, but even like understanding the way that we can impact, influence others around us. So it is really, really exciting. So let me just go ahead and jump in and I will kind of give you the science behind it, and then we will apply this to you, and we'll give you some questions and an exercise to work through for yourself. Um, yeah, so let's talk about just beginning out. What do I mean by thought leadership? I looked up on Google, the all-knowing Google, and asked like, what is a thought leader? Because it's kind of this buzzword that's been going around for a couple of years. And according to Google, it says that a thought leader is someone who is their views are taken as authoritative or influential. And so in the way that it's presented in that way, that definition really is focused on this person's thoughts are influential on how other people think, which I think is a really good definition. I'm not going to disregard that or dismiss it, but I do want to go a little bit farther and maybe put the focus on a little bit different area. Instead of it being the primary focus on the influence it has around others, I want it to really talk about thought leadership primarily in the sense of someone who is managing their own mind or leading their own thoughts in order to influence those around them in the way that they want and have a greater impact in the world. So, for most of us, we are completely unaware of the thoughts that we have. And on average, a normal human will have around 60,000 thoughts a day. And it's a good thing not to be aware of all of our thoughts. That would be paralyzing and debilitating. But it is important to understand that behind all these 60,000 thoughts, there are actually only a few like core beliefs that are driving all of them. So I don't know the number, but let's imagine maybe there's like five core sentences. And then each one of those are like branches off that are kind of like reiterations or a different version of the same thing. And then based from those, you have another bunch of thoughts that are kind of the same thing, but they are like another layer and another layer and another layer. So if you kind of peel back all the layers of those 60,000 thoughts, you really do get just a few sentences that are directing and dictating everything in our mind. And so as we talk about becoming a thought leader, we really want to understand some of those core beliefs and how they are having us show up in the world, how they're driving all the things that we are doing. And so let me just start out by talking about the science behind this, right? This is known, this model that I'm about to show you is really known in the world of behavioral psychology. This isn't something I just made up. But I do think it's really, really helpful for us to understand how we work as humans and how our interactions with other humans work. So I'm going to go over the science and then I'll tell a story so that you can understand more of what I'm talking about. So when we talk about like our thoughts, feelings, and actions, this is really where I'm getting this from. So here's a person, right? And a person has their circumstances, which is really just the things outside of them. And their brain picks up on all the circumstances and is like trying to understand the world around you based on your five senses, right? So your sight, hearing, smell, taste, and feet and touch. And it picks up the information from those five senses, and then that information is sent to the brain, and then the brain has a thought about it. It interprets those senses, and it will decide, like, is this good or bad? Is it safe or is it threatening? Is this, like, it'll kind of decide, like, what do I want to make these senses mean? It interprets it in a way. So it has a thought about it. And then it has lots of thoughts, but one thought will be sent through the body, through the nervous system, from the brain to the nervous system. It'll send an electronic impulse through the nervous system to tell our body how to feel. Like, we will actually feel physical sensations, and we call these feelings, which makes sense. Or emotions is another word for them. And these emotions or these feelings will inform our body, our physical body, our muscles and our heart and our organs and all of these things. It will tell our body how to respond. And so it'll kind of drive our body to act and respond in a certain way. So it's what we do or do not do in response to what our brain is interpreting around us, right? And that's really important because what we do or do not do is actually what creates our results in our world and our experience of our life. So this is kind of one person's experience, right? This is happening all the time. So a thought will go, this will happen, and then it's constantly 60,000 thoughts, and all these things are happening nonstop. Like, this is a loop that we're on all the time, right? And so when we talk about in our coaching community about how we are responsible for our thoughts, feelings, and actions, it's really talking about how we are responsible for the way that we choose to interpret our circumstances, how we choose to interpret the world around us. And we have a lot more agency over that than I think we give ourselves credit for. A lot of times I think we're like, well, what else would we think? Like, it's, of course, we interpreted it that way. Yes, but we also have the ability to reprogram and change the way that we think, thereby changing the way we feel, thereby changing the way we show up and respond, and thereby changing the outcome of our life. And so this is one person, right? Now, so it has a thought, has a feeling, it acts in a certain way. So then those actions become what another person sees or hears. Right? So what this person may do or do not do, the things that are visible become to this person the circumstances of what they see and hear. Well, the brain will interpret that and have a thought about it, right? So they go through the exact same process because this is what humans do. And then they have a thought about it, and then that causes them to feel a certain way. And when they feel a certain way, it has them respond and show up, or it will fuel certain actions. And then those actions will create their results. So this is what I talk about when I'm thinking about this thought leaders, is that our one thought, the initial thought, even though it is a person's responsibility, it doesn't mean that their actions are not going to have an impact or will influence the way that someone else thinks, feels, and decides to respond or show up in the world, right? So just to kind of have an illustration to talk through this and to really help you understand what I mean by this. When I became a coach, when I decided to become a coach, the reason I wanted to is because I had this, belief or desire to help people. And I remember telling people, would say, why are you wanting to become a coach? And I'd say, I want to help people. I want to see their lives transformed. And even though that sounds like a really beautiful thought, and it is a beautiful thought, and it really was a good intention. But underneath that, if I pulled, like, if it was one of the 60,000 thoughts, if I pulled away like the layers and went down to like really what that meant, could sum it up as this: people who come for coaching are broken, and I need to fix them. I need to help them get out of their pain. And so when I had that thought, you can imagine when people came to me, how I was feeling in the conversation, how I showed up as a coach. I was feeling very superior, or maybe self-righteous, or maybe a little judgmental or critical, or maybe kind of pity rather than compassion. Like, I had a lot of feelings just based on that one core belief that these people are broken and I need to fix them. Now, I was completely unaware of that core belief. Really, what I thought was, I'm just helping people. I want to help people, right? I didn't really understand why. What was driving that? And so, of course, I would show up in this kind of superior air and maybe pity for them, maybe a little bit of a critical or judgmental, like, oh, you're broken. I'm here to tell you what to do, right? And so, yeah, you can imagine when I was feeling that way, how I showed up. I always had an agenda. I would get frustrated if they didn't do what I told them to do in order for them to fix their lives. I was really critical. I kind of judged everything they were telling me. Um, I would hold them accountable. But really, what I was saying is, like, you're failing. Like, you need to do this. You need to fix things, or else nothing's going to change for you. Um, I would be really impatient with them. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't a good coach. I'll be honest, right? Like, when had this core belief that people are broken, then I need to fix them. It really had me showing up in a way that was um, not who I wanted to be. And so my own result was that I failed to actually look at myself and fix myself in the way that I was broken as a coach. Um, and it took me a while, right, to like figure this out. So all the while, as I was acting this way, you can imagine the things that they heard and saw from me as someone who has an agenda, or telling them, you need to get this done, or holding them accountable, or kind of having this judgment or criticism towards them. What they were interpreting many times was, I am broken. I can't be fixed. Or it's just creating more evidence for them. They really were um, kind of a hopeless case, right? And so they didn't have to choose to interpret that way. And some people didn't. But I mean, if that's what you're getting from the person you're trusting and the person you're supposed to be really opening up to and asking for help, then of course it would be very easy to interpret and think, yeah, I am broken. And so they were feeling defeated, they were feeling discouraged, they were feeling hopeless, a lot of things. And then as they felt that, then you can imagine that they just gave up. They just kept telling themselves, I am broken. I can't do this. Nothing can change for me. This is just who I am, or how I'm going to be. They didn't really try a lot. They continued the cycle of negative self-talk, right? Like, yeah, it makes sense, right? And so their results is that they didn't have a lot of transformation in their life. And it all came back to me initially believing they're broken and I need to fix them, had their results being that they just continued to believe that they were broken themselves, and they didn't actually do anything to transform their lives, right? And so again, they can choose to think differently. Some of them were like, who are you? And bye, I'm not paying you anymore. And didn't believe that. But for those who did, it really had an impact on the way that their experience was. It had an impact on the results they had. They didn't have great results. And I kept wondering, it's your fault. What's wrong? I'm telling you all the things to do, right? And it wasn't until I uncovered that thought that I really began to transform the way that I showed up as a coach. And then it had a huge impact on the way that their experience of coaching. So I did a lot of work in myself. I did a lot of work on that thought once I became aware that that was in me. Um, and now I 100% believe, like, no question whatsoever, that I believe that my clients, as they come to me, are 100% whole, 100% perfect and worthy, just as they are. I'm not there to fix them. They have everything they need inside of them. I am not there to tell them what to do. I'm there to support them as they begin to shed the negative thought patterns or limiting beliefs that are holding them back. It's not about their own ability or their own capability. I believe they are 100% enough. Like, my whole body believes that. And so when I believe that, I feel things like honor. I feel honored to be in a conversation. I feel honored that they're opening up to me. I feel compassion when I see the way that they talk about themselves. And I'm like, no, like, I feel real compassion for them. The judgment and the criticism dropped. Like, it's no longer there. I felt a lot of love, a lot of, yeah, just feeling really, yeah, that's compassion, love, and empathy, right? And when I felt that way as a coach, then the way that I spoke to my clients became very different. The things that I had them doing, the exercises that I gave them, you know, the way I encouraged them, or the things that I said to them, like, all of that became very different. And so my own results were, I was becoming the kind of coach that I always wanted to be. And I kind of imagined I would be had I not had that thought, right? Um, yeah, and I'm becoming a much, much better coach. Well, my actions, those things that I'm doing for them and saying to them, become their circumstances. And again, they could just not believe me. I can tell them 100 times in a session, you are worthy and you're enough, and they can choose to believe that or not. But eventually, it becomes much easier for them to begin believing that when I am saying that. And when they see that from me, when they hear that from me, then it's much easier for their brain to begin thinking, well, maybe that's true. Maybe I am enough. Maybe I am worthy. Maybe I'm not broken. Right. And then they begin to feel different. They begin to feel empowered. They begin to feel hope. They begin to feel encouraged. They begin to feel loved. They begin to feel um, dignified and worthy and respected, all of those things, which has them showing up so much differently, right? Like, they would do the work, they would get excited, they would come back and celebrate and be like, look what happened. And their brain would begin focusing on the gain rather than the gap, right? Like, they would begin to show up in the sessions and for themselves in a much different way, thereby creating incredible transformation in their life. That's what I'm talking about when I say thought leadership. It wasn't that they weren't responsible for their own thoughts, feelings, and actions, but the way that I initially thought, that one sentence in my head had such an impact and influenced the way that they were able to think as well, thereby the way they felt and the way that they acted and the results that they were getting. Um, And so kind of the point of me telling you this story really is to demonstrate and to illustrate how one sentence can have such a huge impact on ourselves and on those around us, on our sphere of influence. Um, and what I mean by sphere of influence is anybody that you are coming in contact with, right? So when we think about thought leadership, it could be about if you were in a business, or if you're in a boss, or if you were a leader of a team, right? It could be a community of like-minded people. It could be, excuse me, it could be a parent with their children. It could be a person who's in a committed relationship with another person, the way that you show up with them and relate with them. It could be if you're a teacher and you have students, right? Like there's so many ways that we can influence those around us. And so as we're kind of talking through this, I want you to keep in mind that really all this was, I don't need to manage my 60,000 thoughts. I don't need to manage all the things. Really, all I had to change was one sentence in my brain for all of this to be completely different, right? So becoming a thought leader is not actually hard work. It's actually really just managing one sentence in our brain, which I think is really exciting and really incredible. Okay. So for you, let's bring this home to you, right? How can you apply this to your own life and your own sphere of influence? I want you to think about here, let me get my other paper out. Hold on. Sorry. I want you to think about a role that you play that you have influence around those, the other people. You have influence around other people. Um, Again, maybe it could be a teacher, a parent, a spouse. It could be a friend or a family member. It could be a boss or a team leader. I want you to think of one role that you play that you kind of wonder or wish that maybe you had a different influence in your life, or you want to just be curious and say, what kind of influence or impact am I making around those around me? And so we're going to do a model over that. And so if you've worked with me before, you know what I'm talking about with a model. But if not, um, let me pull that up so you can see. And really, the model is just that same diagram I already did, but it's sorry. Here we go. Yeah. Instead of having the whole drawing drawn out, really what we have is just the words. So our circumstances, our thought, feeling, actions, and results. And so as you are thinking about the role that you want to kind of just discover and explore, put that like the name of that role in the circumstance. So this is, you know, who what you are and this is what you do, right? And then I want you to think about the thought you have about that role. So like for instance, if I was a coach, right? My thought was I need to fix them or I need to fix my clients, right? Um, Kind of think about some of the thoughts you have. You can write down a lot of them, a lot of the thoughts that you have about your role and just to see like what are some of the things that I think about being this kind of person or being this being in this role. So here's some examples of some thoughts. I know it's hard just to pull up a thought because we're unaware of a lot of them, right? But I know for a lot of us, a really common thought is, I'm not good enough. I'm not a good enough mother. I'm not a good enough wife. I'm not a good enough boss. I'm not a good enough team leader, whatever it is. Like this idea that like somehow I'm inadequate or I'm not good enough or I'm ill equipped. Um, Another one may be like, I don't know what I'm doing, right? Like I thought that several times as a parent. I don't know what I'm doing. Right? Or it could be like if people really knew, like dot, 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 that kind of imposter syndrome, right? Or I shouldn't be doing this. I'm doing this wrong. It's all on me. I have to figure this out. I don't have enough resources to do what I need to do in this role. People are expecting so much from me. These are all kind of some common thoughts that we have about the different roles that we play in our life. And you may have some other ones, right? It doesn't really matter. There's no magic thought. We're just trying to explore and kind of go through this exercise so that you can see how it works. So then out of the thoughts that you've had, Take one that you feel like maybe, you kind of wonder if it's really influencing those or impacting those around you in a negative way, right? So you can just choose one. So I'm going to give you a second just to write down a bunch of thoughts and then choose one that you're like, I kind of want to dig into this a little bit. I want to see how this may be impacting those around me. And once you've identified a thought that you want to like explore and get curious about, just put that one sentence, just one of the thoughts in the thought line. So make sure it's just one sentence. Try and make it a simple sentence, not like really compound and, have a bunch of ands and buts. Just try and make it one simple sentence. Next, I want you to ask yourself, when I think this thought, how do I feel? Right. And it just should be one feeling. I know you could probably feel a lot of things, but I want you to really identify an emotion. So, some common emotions based on some of the sentences that I presented would be like inadequate. I feel inadequate, or I feel pressure, or I feel stressed or overwhelmed. I feel guilt, or maybe resentment, confusion, feel defeated, frustrated, any of those things that kind of come from some of those common thoughts we have. Excuse me again. And then just write down one feeling that you feel like is in alignment with that thought that you wrote down. All right. And once you've done that, next, I want you to think about, when I'm feeling this way, what are some normal actions or inactions that I take? Like when I feel that way, what are some normal actions that I do or do not do by that's being fueled by that emotion, right? And here you want to write down as many things as you can think of, even if it's just things that happen internally. Maybe it's not the things that happen on the outside. Maybe it's all just in your mind or in your body, but try and think about all the things and write down all the things that you either do or do not do when you're feeling that way. I'll give you some time to write that. And then last, based on these actions, you just write, what do you think you're creating? What do you think are your results when you show up this way? Right. And there's no magic answer here. There's no right or wrong. It's just like based on, if I act like this is kind of what I create. This is my results or the outcomes that I create in my life. And just write that in whatever kind of sentence you want. All right. So that's completing number one. What are your current thoughts about your role? Choose one sentence and put it in the model and complete the model. So that's what we just did. Number two, how do you think that this is impacting the people who are in your sphere of influence, right? When you're thinking about that role, and the people who it may impact, what impact or influence do you think it has on those around you? And you can just write that out. I mean, we're guessing, right? Like it's an assumption, but it's you can probably make a pretty good guess. Like how does that impact those around you? And number three, oh, let's not do number three yet. Sorry. I really want to just sit with that for a second. Sorry, I was getting ahead of myself. Um, yeah, really think about like, isn't it crazy that this one sentence, this one thought that I have can impact not only my own results, but it does impact the way that potentially other people are thinking, feeling, and responding, and then thereby creating their own results, right? And it's just one sentence. The power of one sentence. Isn't that crazy? Like, I really am kind of blown away by the fact that one sentence, a couple of words put together, can have so much power in my life and in other people's lives. Um, and conversely, because of that, like this work matters, right? Like the work to actually manage and think and choose to think differently and believe something differently can have such a dramatic difference in the way that we impact those around us. I think that's pretty incredible. I think that's really powerful, right? Like if that sentence has so much power, well, then another sentence will also have a lot of power, right? And we get to choose which sentence to think and believe. And so, talk about being a thought leader. Like you have the opportunity and the power within you to impact the world around you in such a powerful way, in such a good way, simply by managing one sentence in your brain. Mind blowing. I just think it's so cool. I love that. I love how easy it is, but also how powerful it can be. Easy, high impact. That's what I call those things. And those are the best kinds of, those are the best things for me, I think, to put my energy towards. I'm going to get another drink because I'm coughing. So sorry. All right. Now that we talked about the way that we can kind of guess how that may impact other people around us, we get to decide if that's a thought that's benefiting us or not. And if it's not, we can look at it and say, well, what would I want to think instead? Going back to the example that I used about believing that my clients or, people who come to me are broken and I need to fix them, to everyone who comes to me are 100% worthy and enough just as they are. They do not need to be fixed. Like basically it was the opposite, right? And that had me showing up so different in my practice. And my clients were getting such better results and just, yeah, night and day difference. And it was just one sentence. So, what would you want to believe instead? What would you want to think instead in that specific role for the people to have a different impact on those around you? And you can just write that down. And once you wrote that sentence down, we don't have to go through the feelings and actions and result. You can on your own. But for the purpose of today, we're just going to ask, how will that impact those those same people differently? Like what do you think would be um what do you think would be different about the way that you impact or influence them because you've changed that one sentence? And once you've kind of thought through that and you really think, is this the way I want to impact people? Is it worth my time to put in the work to change the way I believe, to change that one sentence in my brain? Because the truth is, if it's one of those core beliefs, it's going to take some work. It's going to take you being intentional and thinking on purpose. Like those core beliefs are so hardwired in our brains that it's kind of the default thought. It's the thing that's driving it all, and we're unaware of it. And so it's going to take intention. It's going to take work to reprogram and rewire those core beliefs or some of those base thoughts, but totally possible for you. And just remembering the kind of impact that you can have in your world just by working on that one sentence. If you want extra support in this, then I would love for you to sign up for a discovery call. It's completely free, and we can talk more about this and to see how this will work for you. And I can help lead you through a process that will bring incredible transformation, not only for you and the way that you show up in your world and the results you're creating, but also having a greater impact, the kind of impact you want for those around you, your children, your loved ones, your family, your team members, your employees, whatever it is. You have an opportunity to be a thought leader in their lives as well. So sign up for a free discovery session. You can go to www.furtherup.org. That's my website. I don't even know if we have to say www anymore, but I'm old school maybe, but furtherup.org. You can click on any of the buttons. They're all over the page. Or you can email me at faith@furtherup.org. Either way, I can set you up with a free discovery session and see what we can do to begin creating new thoughts in a way that has you being the incredible thought leader that you want, impacting those around you for good. And let's change the world together. I'm super excited about this. I'm super excited to meet you guys and discuss this further with you. Yeah. So I hope this was helpful for you today. And every month we do a webinar over a specific theme. So be checking out my social media. I have Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. You can check me out on any of those for more information. And yeah, let's change the world one thought at a time. Until next time, I will see you later. Bye.